So Twiggy,
Yes, hello.
this is so exciting for me personally
Oh,
because I spent my early years right out of school in London in the 60s.
oh, did you?
I did, because I went for a job interview in fashion.
Mhm.
And it was horrific. The guy objectified me. And I left crying. And I said,
Oh.
I never want to be in this fashion business. It's disgusting. I want to travel. I got a job at an airline and in the office. And for $29 round trip, I would come to London.
$29
round trip every weekend. I was here. And I was in the middle of everything that was going on here. And it was just like nothing, but that what was happening.
So what year was that?
From 64.
Oh, yeah. See, I was discovered in 66.
Yes.
So the middle of the 60s exploded in London.
So 64 to, actually it was more like to 71. And so every memory of, I'm going to be 80 this year.
Not.
Yes.
You look amazing.
No, I'm 80.
Well, I'm close, but you look
But
amazing.
I'm still older than you are. And so I really experienced what you experienced and what very privileged people of our generation had this wonderful experience of a revolution, of something profound happening. And the same kind of thing is happening now, but it's quite different. So I think your film, what it was in that time and what's happening now, have a great connection.
Oh, that's interesting.
I really do. And I think the interest in what that was about, that change, that big radical change, and certain people like you, for whatever reason, had that energy of the moment that changed. You changed fashion. You changed the way people look.
But that's what I look like. That's what I mean.
No, but you changed it.
I didn't set out to change it. I was a school kid.
Yeah, but the history.
But I was a mod, so I was very into my clothes.
And
I used to make them. I'm a great seamstress. If you ever need a seamstress, I'm really good. Yeah, I still sew and I still knit. Yeah. So because in those days, the clothes I wanted to wear, you couldn't buy.
Right.
Because I was 14, 15, 16 years old. Mm-hmm. And in England, the shops, the department stores, the clothes were for your mum. Yeah. Or for kids. Yeah. There was no middle ground until in this country, in UK, we got Barbara Hulanicki and Bieber. Barbara's one of my dearest friends. And Quant, obviously. But it's interesting you said that about the film, because for people listening, we've just released a documentary of my life. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because we've opened around London and the UK. But last week I was in Barcelona and then Copenhagen. And I wasn't sure how they would react to it, because I'm British and it went down a bomb. It was amazing. They were like, actually in Copenhagen, in the first 4 rows, a row of women stood up and they all had Twiggy masks on.
God, no.
Yeah, it was hysterical, and I didn't have a camera because I was on stage doing a Q&A. Right. But it's amazing. But you're right. It's that thing that whatever happened that I was part of, that, catapulted so many people in, like yourself and like Barbara and like the Beatles. And something like that is happening now, but you're right, it's very different. But the thing, obviously the film is about me and my life, but it's also about the social, what was happening in those years. And it's really interesting.
And
that part of it.
I think you fit that moment. You fulfilled the need for that moment, and however you manifested to be a part of it, like whatever, I don't think you had a choice.
No, I didn't.
It was just, you were going to
You know, quite honestly, when that happened to me, and it literally did happen overnight from, you know, one week I was at school and the next week I went and had my hair cut. I went in to have my hair styled, actually, but the hairdresser, Leonard, said, I want to cut your hair.
Oh, Leonard.
And
okay.
I was too shy I didn't want my hair cut. But I was so shy and intimidated, you know, because, you know, I grew up in the suburbs of London, you know, a happy family, but working class family. And I was suddenly in this very posh hairdressing salon that the magazine had sent me to have some test shots. They wanted me to have my hair done. And so I was so intimidated when he said, I want to cut your hair. I just kind of nodded, and I was too shy to say, I don't want my haircut. But it'd be interesting if I had said that. I might not be sitting here now, because the haircut was a lot to do with what happened. So much.
And so, I didn't realize it was Leonard.
Yeah,
that's Leonard. Really. So how did you get to the agency? How did that come about? So you said the agency sent you.
Oh, no, it wasn't. It was a magazine.
Oh. Okay.
Somebody who knew a friend of mine, because, you know, I was a schoolgirl. So in the week I didn't wear makeup, weren't allowed. I went to a grammar school, so it was very strict. But at weekends, like all teenage girls, I used to play around with makeup. And I did, you know, the false eyelashes and the lines underneath. And a friend of a friend saw me one day with the makeup on and said, you know, maybe you could model. And I thought, oh my God, they must be mad. You know, girls like me didn't become models. Because in England, girls who became models came from upper class families.
Oh, you're kidding?
Oh, yeah, they were from posh families.
Well, see,
there
that
were
was
very
before.
few working class models.
That was the break. That was before.
And when it happened to me, there were a few other girls it happened to as well that weren't from posh families. So she sent me along to this magazine because she had a friend on it, a woman's magazine. And she actually said, you'll never be a model because you're too small and you're too thin. and I wasn't trying to be thin. I was very healthy. I was a kid, you know. And so I was really upset. But she said, but you've got a really interesting, sweet little face. I'd like to do some test shots. So she sent me, but she said, your hair's a mess. You need your hair done. So she sent me to Leonard's. That's how that happened.
And so, what did your hair look like? How long was it?
It was probably about shoulder length, like it is now. I was a mod. So if you look up kind of mods, they either had short, spiky hair or parted in the middle and straight down. Yeah. And that's how I had my hair. And that's why I didn't want it cut. But obviously it changed my life. And then Leonard sent me to his photographer, the dear, lovely Barry Lattigham, which was the next stroke of luck because he happened to be one of the great beauty photographers.
Yes.
And he sat me in front of the camera. I'd never been in front of a proper camera before. And he just said, look into the lens. And there's a very well-known photo of me in a Fair Isle sweater, just looking at camera.
Yes.
And that's the first picture he took.
You're kidding.
Yeah. And yes, that's probably the most well-known photo, which is interesting. Yeah. Because I didn't know what I was doing.
But it was just, I think, just in your eyes, right? It just, like, your eyes just said what was going on. Do you know what I mean? It was like your look, the expression, it was just, this is what's happening now.
Well, it was a very new look because if you look at the models just before me, they were gorgeous. All like 5'10", 6 foot, but long hair, very glamorous, very gorgeous. Yeah. And I was like this funny little duck with the eyelashes.
But I was, I was describing the difference. So I would bring clothes back to my friends. And so everything at the time when I arrived here first time, all the clothes were below the knee.
Oh, yeah.
And stockings with garter belts.
That's right.
And And I came here, and the first thing I did was shorten my skirt. I was like, this is so good. This is really good. And I didn't like fashion. I wanted to be a painter. I thought fashion, because fashion before all of this was really not great. I mean, I was wearing vintage even then, when there was like vintage wasn't a thing.
When vintage wasn't vintage.
It wasn't a thing. But so I would bring back the clothes, and it was so revolutionary. And people on the street in New York would call me a prostitute, and then all my friends wanted to be called prostitutes.
Yeah, actually, it's funny, because when I went to New York in 1967, because when it happened to me here, you know, I was very, very well known in UK, but Diana Vreeland, who was the then editress of American Vogue, and she was like God, wasn't she, in the fashion business? Yeah. And if she kind of said, that's the photographer, that's the designer, that's the model, it was like, that was it. And she took me to New York. So I always say that Diana Vreeland turned me global. Yeah. But when I arrived in New York to do a shoot for Vogue through her and with the fabulous Richard Avedon, just 17 I was. And I arrived at the airport and, you know, I was going in to do a job, and there were photographers and girls with banners with my name. I mean, it was like, wow, what's happening?
Well, because it was revolutionary.
Yeah. And there's Bert Stern, another great photographer, did a documentary of my trip to New York.
Oh, really?
And there's a clip of me on Easter Sunday with a coat right up to here. It was cold, so it was a little fake fur coat, very short, with my short hair. And all the other young girls around me, and they come up and talk to me. And they've all got knee-length skirts and pillar box hats.
Yeah. It was that.
And they stopped. They had a guy with a microphone. They were stopping people, and the girls were saying, "Oh yeah, that's Twiggy. Oh, she's so cute." And they stopped this middle-aged couple, and the guy, she's got a Easter bonnet on and everything, and the guy's got his raincoat tied up. And they say to the guy, did you know who that is? Oh, yeah, that's that Twiggy. Oh, yeah, she's from England. And they said to her, what do you think? Oh, she'll last a couple of weeks. It's brilliant. And he got it on camera.
But the thing was, everybody knew that what was before was never going to be again.
No, that's true.
It was over.
It was like music.
For sure. Over.
The
everything.
Beatles changed music.
Yeah.
You know, we had friends I met later who were like croony singers. Their careers almost stopped.
Yeah, done.
They kind of came back later, but
not in the same way. No,
the bands, you know, with the Beatles and all, everyone wanted to be like that.
So when this was all happening, did you have a sense of the importance of it, or you just thinking, I've got this modeling gig? Or
it was really exciting. You've got to remember, all I'd done was go to school and been at home with my mum and dad. And I was a happy child. I actually loved school, and I was planning to try and get into art school because I wanted to be a dress designer.
That's there you go. Well,
that's why I learned to sew. Well, my sisters sewed and my mum sewed, and I wanted to make things I wanted to make that I couldn't buy. So, no, I had no, I just thought, this is amazing. You know, it was amazing. It was like, oh my God, I was flying to Paris, flying to Milan, flying to New York. And then suddenly, because of the New York trip, I suddenly became like the celebrity status, not just a working model. Yeah. I mean, so that was another thing.
That definitely, see, that doesn't happen to models unless there's something major going on. And that the Twiggy sensation was, things are not going to be the same. This is what the message is.
Yeah, because I was on the Johnny Carson show. And
so
who were the other ones in there? Mike
Douglas.
Oh, he was so lovely.
He was very nice.
He was so lovely. Yeah. They were all lovely, actually.
And I think because you were so friendly and sweet and a nice person, that everybody wanted to know you even more. Like, you you could be somebody's friend. They didn't feel that you were like doing this, but that you could be somebody's best friend. And that made it even more exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting because in our documentary, they've got a clip. They've got an interview with a very famous fashion journalist in England, Susie Menkes.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, she was talking about me, saying nice things. And she said, but the big thing with Twiggy that was different from other models, she smiled.
Yeah.
Because in those days, models were all very...
Totally. Yes.
It was all that. No. I was a kid.
No, but that also changed it, that you could be, somebody could aspire to be at least your friend.
It wasn't untouchable, I think.
Yeah.
I think.
And I think whatever you put on could sell because of that. Like you could sell anything. Whatever you put on.
It did work that way.
And it did work that way, yes. By the way.
Well, I did my first collection, manufacturers approached me and I did my first collection. I mean, I worked with a couple of young designers from the Royal College of Art, actually.
Oh, you did?
And that was in 1967. And that was going really well until we found, I was so green. I was 17, 18 years old. We were being totally ripped off financially by these guys. They were selling abroad and switching the labels so that they didn't have, they were my clothes, but they were changing the labels so that they didn't have to pay commission on.
Yeah. So it's not an easy business. Let me just tell you, it's not an easy business. It's
I know, I've done it a few times. Yeah. But years and years later, I mean, I've done a few collections. I did a collection for a few years in Japan. And that went very well, but we did teenage clothes for that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we did kind of.
And Japan is great. I mean,
they're all very little, so all the little teenage things.
Interesting.
And then I did a collection. I did a campaign for Marks and Spencer's here, which is a big department store, chain department store, and everything I wore apparently sold very well. So I said, well, all right, let me do. Let's do
I mean,
so I did a collection with them for 4 years, and that was great fun.
See, I'm not surprised that this would have been something people would approach you about because there wasn't a thing that anything you wore I wanted. I mean, no, it's true. It was like everybody thought that they could be you or look like you if they wore what you were wearing. No,
that's true. Couldn't. Yeah, that's true of many people.
And sort of your attitude and your I'm mimicking like just your whole vibe was this different kind of attitude about being pretty, being clearly revolutionary.
There's millions of pretty girls, but it's got to be more. But
it's of the moment. So if I use you as an example all the time when I'm talking about what image represents a decade or an era, and so if you think of Marilyn Monroe, that's a time, and that's a body that represented that time. That represented the woman. Yeah. That represented the way the woman felt she needed to present herself for men. And it
down to the hair and the makeup
really
and everything.
Describes a lot, right? It describes the place of men and women.
Absolutely.
And then you come along and it's like, excuse me, it's different now. And that's a big message.
Yeah, it is. Actually.
Just think about. So
I didn't plan to do it.
No, but you were
tried to explain. But
you were there to do that.
Yeah,
and that message. And so when I talk to women about the role of women in different eras, I say Marilyn Monroe, and then I say Twiggy. Now this girl is different. she's not going to be the same as Marilyn Monroe. Doesn't even want to, doesn't even think about it. Is thinking
I was so different than her. I mean, I wouldn't have even dreamt. I mean, I loved Monroe.
But it was such a different time.
Oh, absolutely.
That meant it meant you had to wear a bra like that. Yeah. You had to stuff. I remember stuffing my bra with foam and everything else because it wasn't happening. But then it was like, okay, this is us. This is our generation. She's our generation. She's representing the way we don't need garter belts. We don't need stockings. We could wear tights and wear short skirts, or we could wear short skirts and no
bare
tights.
Legs,
yeah, right.
Exactly.
I mean, so look at that message about the way the future is going to be. It wasn't just the 60s or the 70s. It was going forward. Because what you did in that image that became Twiggy and the way fashion looks, the way women look, it's still today. It's still being copied today. It's still being mimicked today.
It's interesting when I meet kind of fashion people and they say, you're on every mood board. You meet designers, you're on every mood board.
Yes.
Because it's just a moment in time that...
But it's not over. So what that marker just carried through to today. And I think it's important that this film is today, as I said, because it's now a message about what has happened, where we are, the baby boomer generation. And then, so what's going to happen next? So we're talking about AI, we're talking about avatars, we're talking about, in order to be different, nothing could top what you represented except AI.
Yeah.
So I mean that's the
well, that's why so many organizations and acting and visual organizers are fighting the AI thing because it could be so dangerous.
No, but it also could be. I'm actually an advocate for AI. I believe that it's going to be amazing in our
if
culture,
it's used in the
used properly,
right way.
But
I think many actors are very nervous because.
But you have to think about the new opportunities for what can come. Now, if you have access to any images of you could have a business, an AI business, using and licensing that image for AI.
Really?
No, this is a real thing.
I don't.
I'm telling you, I know about this.
Stuff.
I know.
Oh, do you?
This. Yes.
That's amazing.
Right now, models are being paid to be model avatars for AI, and they'll have more work. I mean, these are models; they're not Twiggy. They're like working models, and they can be used for campaigns for commercial companies, for like the Gap or any.
Well, why is that different than a normal?
Because it's
advertising.
Well,
job.
First of all, the models can get more work, and they may not, instead of AI copying them.
Yeah,
they can make a deal with AI so you can license it.
Oh, I see.
So you and brands can create AI Twiggies. I'm not kidding. I'm telling you.
Beyond my kind of knowledge of how one does that.
Well, you wouldn't do it. You would do it with people who
with a company.
Do it. Yeah. But I think this is like a great opportunity. Oh. You have this brand. You have this IP.
Yeah, I do have a brand.
Right? So it has great value. But the real impact, I think, is that you took Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
Here's Twiggy. And it's still like nothing replaced it, except now AI is coming in, and that's how different it had to be.
Really?
I'm positive of it.
That's interesting.
So when you're talking about the film and people are asking you questions, what's the most common question?
Well, Well, if they've seen the film, they don't have to ask how did it all start, because it's in the film. What did it feel like? Were you intimidated? Were you scared? Was it excited? All those sort of questions. Also, there's a clip which has become very famous that was from when I went there in 1967 of Woody Allen interviewing me. Really? And it's gone viral, the clip, actually. You can see it if you go on YouTube. And he was unknown then. This is 1967. And I just arrived in New York, and Bert Stone was doing the documentary. And Bert said to me, I've got this friend, he's an up-and-coming comedian, and he's a jazz musician. I'd like to put you in a studio with an audience and get Bert to interview you. And I went, oh, yeah, lovely. Because I was used to people saying, how did you get your name? What do you eat? Right. Where did you grow up? Usual. And I sit down opposite Woody Allen with all these people in this studio. And his opening line to me is, what are your views on serious matters? And I said, I pull a face and say, what do you mean? And he says, who's your favourite philosopher?
Oh, seriously.
And I was like, I can remember the feelings. My stomach dropped, and I thought, oh my God, because I didn't know any
What a jerk, though. I mean, he totally.
You've got to see the clip. It's hysterical.
Outrageous.
But what happened, because people say you were so clever getting back at him. I didn't mean, I was panic stricken. I said to him, I don't know any philosophers. What are their names? And he says, your Greeks and your Romans. And yeah, but what are their names? And he said, and in the end, he couldn't come up with any idea. And he turns to camera like that, and it's over. But it was like, and I was mortified. I was so embarrassed. I remember going off set, and I just burst into tears. I was so upset. I've never been. Actually, we did a screening. Where was it? Oh, at the Electric, I think, in London, Electric Cinema, and at the end of it, some people were asking me questions, and some guy at the back went, Twiggy? I went, yeah. And he went, who's your favourite philosopher? And I wasn't quick enough, but I should have said, who's yours? Who is the audience? I mean, it's interesting because I thought it would be. It's a lot of women my sort of age who grew up with me. They're in their mid to late 60s, going on into their 80s. Yeah. So they remember the journey. Yeah. But then there's another lot who are young. Like 18, 20, who kind of knew it probably from their mum. And with the internet now, you can, but I think it's and more, they're obsessed with it. I mean, most letters I get are from girls between 18 and 25. Yeah, and I had one last week from a 18-year-old in China. I didn't know they knew me. Well, I mean, social media. I hope you have somebody doing social media for you with your film. I do Instagram because that is everything. Yeah, and I know. TikTok, I don't do TikTok. You need to get somebody 18 to do TikTok for you because that is is it? It's that girl. It takes so much time. I know, so don't do it. Somebody, I mean, that. But I thought TikTok, it's like people dancing. Younger. No, they could do anything, but you want that audience is that girl. Yeah. Yeah, and she's, from tweens to 25 and to emulate Twiggy and the film would definitely I think the film's had a big impact on a lot of and the other thing that's amazing with older women, they come out quite tearful. Really? Because I think it takes them back to, because obviously the film, the first half is mainly about the 60s. But then, I'm still around, chaps. It's gone through all the other things I've done, like the movies and on Broadway. Yeah, so let's which is very much more important to me. Well, I mean, it's your development. And I'm really proud of that. Yeah. I mean, I'm proud of the modelling in the 60s, but I didn't orchestrate that. It happened to me. But that was the marker. That was thing. And then, so what...
So how did it evolve after that? Obviously, you had talent, and you have talent. So,
but I didn't know that.
but luckily,
the next big marker in my life, aged 18, I met a man called Ken Russell, who, for those who don't know, was the biggest English film director and made wonderful films.
Yes.
He did Women in Love and The Music Lovers.
My God, yes.
And he met me for a film that didn't happen, actually. But we became, him and his wife, Shirley, I mean, they're not with us anymore, sadly, but we became really good friends. And we'd been friends for about a year. And when I was about 18 and a half, I'd been to see a production of The Boyfriend, which is a pastiche of a 20s musical on stage.
Right.
And it hadn't been done since 1952. And I went to see it and I was just like, oh my God, this is brilliant. And I was having dinner with Ken and Shirley the next night. And I was going on and on about it. I was so excited. Oh my God, you've got to go and see The Boyfriend. It's brilliant. And Ken, who loved his champagne, had a few glasses and said, I've got a great idea. I've always wanted to do a musical. You can play Polly Brown, who's the lead girl, and I'll direct it.
Is that how?
And I said, oh, okay. But I thought, he's just drunk. You know, he's had so much. So I went home and, you know, because I was still, I was still modelling, you know, I was doing all right, let's put it that way. And I went home and the next morning the phone rang, not mobiles, landline, and it was Ken, sober, saying, what do you think? And I said, what do you mean, what do I think? And he said, about doing The Boyfriend. I said, oh my God, are you serious? I said, but I've never done anything like that. He said, well, you'll be great. I promise you'll be great. And it took a year to put together. And MGM, the studio, were very nervous about me in the lead, which I totally understand. You know, I was this very, very famous model. And, you know, that old thing about models being thick and stupid, which is not true. I know many beautiful, wonderful models who are as bright as buttons. But anyway, so anyway, they eventually gave in to Ken because luckily he had the power. Yeah. And God bless him, he said, I won't do it without Twiggy. And then he sent me off to dance class because I'd never danced before. So I'd spent a year learning to tap dance and sing. He wouldn't let me go to acting lessons. Because obviously he saw something that he wanted to keep, I suppose. And we did The Boyfriend, for which I won 2 Golden Globe Awards.
Yes, you did. I was going to say, I know you won.
And that was a learning lesson by fire, really. I mean, the cast was so lovely to me. I was so nervous. You can imagine. I wasn't nervous of the cameras because I was used to cameras. But I was really nervous acting and singing and, you know, doing a film, a major film.
And everybody loved it. I mean, it had
such a sweet film.
No, but it also, again, you know, your persona is really, I mean, even just speaking with you, you are like, you're so cool. You're like a fun person. You just are.
I love doing it. And that changed my life. Because
that, I think, also changed people's perception of you in a major way.
Yeah. Well, also in that film was a guy called Tommy Tune.
Oh my God, I made clothes for him.
Yeah, he's very tall. 6'6". He has to have everything made. It's very hard to buy. But he was in The Boyfriend. Actually, I got him cast because I'd been in. Ken wouldn't fly at that time. And he wanted, there was an American role in it. And he said, I'm not going to get an English person doing a terribly American accent. I want an American who can sing and dance. And I had been in New York doing a modeling job. And on the TV one night, I was just getting back, you know. And on the TV, I saw this creature, this amazing, with a lot. He was so beautiful.
Totally.
This is 68. So he was incredibly...
Was it? 68?
We filmed in 69, so this would have been 68. And those legs, and he was dancing. I thought, oh my God, who is this person?
I know.
And I waited till the credits, and it came up Tommy Tune, and I thought, what a great name. His real name, I have to say. I thought he must have changed it, but he was born Tommy June. And I went back to London and I said, Ken, I found this guy. You've got to see him. So in those days, he had to get a videotape flown across because there was no internet or anything of Tommy. And he cast him. So I was saying, Tommy, you owe me. No, I didn't. And then after that, 12 years later, Tommy got me out to New York. And we did My One and Only on Broadway.
Oh, my God, that's right.
So,
was it 12 years?
Because we did the film in 69, 70. 79, more 13 years. We opened May 1st, 83.
Wow.
And ran for a year and a half.
And such a different time, right?
Yeah.
I mean...
But New York was great then. Yeah. It was a bit dodgy in places.
Yes, it was.
We weren't allowed. We were on West 46th Street, I think, the St. James. I think that's on West 46th. And we were told by all the producers, do not go further downtown.
To 42nd.
You couldn't go to 42nd Street.
No,
it was so dodgy.
Isn't
that weird? And yet now it's like...
Well, we have our ups and our downs.
I love New York. If I couldn't live in London, because London's my home, I'd live in New York.
And I say the same thing. It. If I couldn't live in New York, I would live in London. I mean, the energy and both, it's different energy, but...
What's it like now after COVID? Because I haven't been back since COVID.
Yeah, so COVID was really rough because we're so... congested, and you have so much air here. Yeah, and we are just like
it was pretty bad here.
But your buildings are not. Yeah, it's like we're just like this, and it was. We were like little pigeons.
Did you get out of the city, or did you stay in the city?
Well, I have my company, so we were kind of finding ways to work because we have to do fittings. We have to you can't work from a Zoom to create a collection. So, but there were times where we couldn't leave, and it was like being in chicken coops. Suppose we all have apartments. It was a bit, we were lucky because we live in London, but we've got a place in the countryside and we managed to get down there. The hard thing for me was not seeing my daughter and my grandchildren. I didn't see them for 4 months. It was like tell me,
horrendous.
You have grandchildren.
I do, my angels.
And so
my 10-year-old granddaughter, who's my daughter Carly's eldest, she's amazing. But I think so.
I was just gonna say it's every other generation that connect. So I was going to say, which of your grandchildren are the every other? But you answered that before I asked you.
I mean, she's since had a little boy who's 5, because Joni's 10 and Theo's 5, and he's as cute as a button. But there's something about Joni that she's quite eccentric.
Oh, really?
I've got pictures of me very young, and she looks very much like me.
That's it. That's exactly what happens.
Little reincarnation.
So does she know who Twiggy is?
She does now, but she didn't before. No, they call me Mimi. I picked that because that's an American name for grandma, isn't it?
Yes.
And I always thought it was great because I didn't want to be Granny because I don't feel like a granny.
I know, but Twiggy's such a great name.
So I thought Mimi's a good name.
Where did Twiggy come from?
It was a boy. My first boyfriend had a brother. And he used to tease me because my legs were so skinny. And he used to call me Sticks.
Oh,
and Sticks turned into Twiggy one day.
It's a great name.
And when I met the journalist who wrote the piece, Twiggy, the Face of 66, I was introduced to her as Leslie. And somewhere in the conversation it came out that I had this nickname Twiggy. And she used it as a headline.
Yeah.
Because Leslie wouldn't be the same.
You're so not Leslie.
I know.
I mean, that you weren't meant to be Leslie in this lifetime. You're totally not Leslie.
I mean, it's a mad name, Twiggy, but it's been very good to me.
So great. It's so great. I just...
it's not so unusual in America, really, because lots of people have unusual names, don't they, in America?
But Twiggy is...
No, but they do. No.
Do you think people are named? I don't think people name their kids Twiggy because you're so
lots of animals.
animals?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's so many dogs and cats called Twiggy. And a friend of mine, God bless her, she sent me an adoption thing, and she'd adopted a baby giraffe that they'd named Twiggy, which is perfect because the legs. And many years, 30 years ago, we went to South Africa, and we were invited to go to a safari park. And when we got there, they said, "We hope you don't mind, but there's a baby hippopotamus that we've called Twiggy.
I love it.
Will you come and have your pictures?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." But they wouldn't let me get in the enclosure because they're a bit dangerous.
So. Yeah.
So I stood, it was a mesh fence. So she was one side and I was the other. And all the time we did the picture, she just ate.
Which I think is so appropriate for the name. Well, how did you meet your husband?
We met.
He is the coolest, by the way. And he's so good looking.
Yeah,
my husband actually has white hair too and has the same
I
kind of
love
vibe.
Silver.
Yeah.
But when I met him, he had dark hair. And we've been together 40 years.
Whoa.
We met in 1980. I'd just come back from New York from doing my one and only for a year and a half. Now, I came back, Carly was 5, 6. And I came back because I hadn't seen my family and friends for all that time. So I came back, and I was thinking of going back to New York because, I'd been living there for nearly 2 years doing a play, and I loved it. And then I met Lee, and we had met once before, 10 years before. And he was with his then lady. I was with my daughter's dad, who I was married to, Michael, who was American. And sadly, he died in 83. He was very young. He had a drink problem and it killed him. It was not a happy period. But anyway, so I came back but I was doing a big Broadway show. I couldn't stop. You can't keel over. No. It was horrible.
Oh, my God.
But, and I had a daughter. I had to support her. And I was doing a major Broadway show.
And plus having somebody who has, I have a brother who had died from his problems too. And it weighs so heavy on family members. And here you are, Twiggy, and having to worry about.
Yeah, well, I dealt with it for a few years thinking I could make him better, but you can't. Unless they want to do it, you can't. No. You can't. Any addiction, you can't. I tried everything, but anyway. So I came back to England. I'd met him once before. That relationship, although they had a son who's my stepson, Ace, and so it's 10 years later. And I met Lee 3 times in the space of, how big London is. We met 3 times in the space of a week. Once I went to dinner with old friends and they'd invited another person who brought Lee along just by chance. And we got on like a house on fire, and I thought he was gorgeous. But he didn't ask for my phone number, which I always tease.
Really? Oh, really?
I always tease him about. And then...
And why didn't he? Did you?
Because he said I knew I could get it, which he did.
I love it.
He did. And then we met in a restaurant. He'd been to see a play, I'd been to see a play. And I'd done a film with Jonathan Pryce, the actor. Mm-hmm. And he was at the table with Jonathan, a group of about 13 people. And I went over to say hello to Jonathan, and Lee stood up. And so we, laughed and said, "Oh, no, not you again," and things. And then, the last time I was actually going to get Carly into a little day school while I was still in London. And I'd been to see the headmistress. I came out, got in my, as Lee said, very posh Jaguar car, which I treated myself to. And I was just driving away, and Lee was walking up the street, and he was renting a flat opposite the school.
No.
Do you know how big London is?
Yeah. I mean...
So somebody up there.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And I stopped the car and said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I live over there." And I said, "Oh, my God, do you want a cup of tea?" And that was 40 years ago. Wow. This year.
Wow. Definitely a soulmate.
Yeah.
You can totally
he's
read
a good
that.
guy. And he's, and he was, at that time, he one of the biggest English actors. He'd worked with Polanski. He'd worked with Zeffirelli. I mean, he'd done really cream stuff. Yeah. So I knew him really well. And so we've but we made a pact when we decided we were going to be together that if one of us got the good gig, we'd go with them, because in our business, it's separation that's so awful.
Not good.
Not good. And so we did that. And he then started writing. And so that's his main thing now. And he's just actually published his first poetry book.
Oh, wow.
He found, in COVID, we thought, what are we going to do? What we do today? We clear the bookshelves. So we were clearing our shelves out, and he found this folder, because he's always written poetry. When you're an actor and you're on the road or you're on film locate, when they did the Zeffirelli film, he was in Italy for a year, because in those days the films went on the big films.
Yeah.
And he found this folder, and it was all full of poems that he'd written. So he started to organise them and started writing again. This is in COVID, because there was, nothing else to do. I started a podcast.
When did you start the book? So tell me about how you started to do the book and what motivated you to do
the book.
Don't you? Oh, I mean the film.
Oh, the film.
When did you start that? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, so he then put together a book, which has just come out, called Now and Then. So it's lovely. So I'm married to a poet now.
That's so cool.
An actor, a director, and a poet. But
and he is very charming.
He's very charming.
It's like,
no, he's a good guy.
And the two of you are like great.
Yeah, thank you.
But so
the film came. Well, I do a podcast like you called Tea with Twiggy.
I love that.
And I started in COVID. There was nothing else to do. So my then agent rang and said, "Do you fancy doing a podcast?" And quite honestly, I didn't really know what that was very new here then. I don't know when they started in the States.
A bit. It depended in certain areas, especially with men. There were more men were listening to podcasts initially.
Yeah.
And then it started to
And there were lots of political ones here and things like that. And anyway, he called me, he said, "Do you fancy doing a podcast?" And I said, "Oh, God, I don't know." Anyway, he put me together with my lovely producer. Lee came up with the title of Tea with Twiggy, actually.
That's great.
And because I said, if I do it, I don't want to be political. I don't want to talk about anything heavy. I just want it to be a chat. Like we've gone out to have a cup of tea and a bit of cake, and we're just chatting.
Right.
And I was very nervous, the first one. I don't know whether you were the first one, but so I rang one of my dear friends, Joanna Lumley, who is divine, and she is the funniest person.
She is truly
she's
funny.
Brilliant. In our documentary, she is hysterical, because they interview her. And she talks about models before me, because she was a little bit before me. And she's so funny.
She is. Truly.
She actually steals the film. She's brilliant.
She is.
But anyway, I rang Joanna and I said, "I'm going to do a podcast. Will you be my first guest? Because I'm really scared." She said, "Oh, darling, of course I will." So she was hysterical, and we just laughed through the whole thing, because she was telling stories, and I thought, "Oh, this is really good fun." And we did it on Zoom because it was COVID. We couldn't be together, and that's why I've continued doing them on Zoom actually. But so that was the first one. I think I've done about 100 now.
Oh, cool.
It was lovely. I started off doing people I knew, because I could call them and I knew them and I didn't feel too scared. But once I got a bit braver, then people started to ask if they could come on.
Right.
And one of them was Sadie Frost, who directed my documentary. And her company called and said she's just done a documentary about Mary Quant, which you should see, actually. It's really good. And which I knew, and they sent me a copy because it hadn't been released, and I knew she was doing it. Because I vaguely knew Sadie, but she's that much younger than me, so we didn't really hang out together. But you know how in certain circles you kind of, your paths cross. Yeah. And she's an act. She's actually, we always say we've got quite parallel lives. She started as a model. She became an actress. She's had collections, design collections. So we're kind of similar in a way. But and she's really lovely. And so she came on talking about Quant. And I said, "Are you going to do another documentary? I think it's brilliant that you've switched careers." Because, when you hit a certain age, certainly for actresses, the parts aren't as many as they used to be. The age-old story, apart from a few actresses who, the big ones. So, and I said, I really admire you for kind of branching, because she still acts, but, she said, I just want, I needed to do something. I need my brain to work. And she said, she went off and did a course in film. And she made this documentary on Mary Quant, which is fabulous. And I said, are you going to do any more? And she said, well, I love doing Quant because I loved... a lot of it was set in the 60s, although Quant started in the 50s.
Yeah,
but a lot of
she
it was
really
60s.
Was first.
Yeah.
She was first.
Yeah.
That's it.
In the 50s.
Yeah.
And then obviously the 60s was a big chunk. She said, I loved researching all that. And she said, so I'd like to find someone, in that kind of, which she went, oh, I should do you. So again, it wasn't planned.
That is so cool.
And,
see,
I've had people approach me over the years to do it.
I bet.
But it's a very personal thing to get involved in. And either I didn't get on with them or it wasn't the right kind of treatment, I didn't think. And I said to Sadie on, the podcast, well, let's talk about it, next week over a cup of tea. And we went out to lunch, actually. And I thought, actually, she's a good one to do it with because I like her. She's a woman. So she's been very much in the public eye like I have.
So she understands.
She understands. Yeah. Because if you haven't been in, you understand. If you haven't been in the public eye, it's a very different. And I try and keep I like to live a very normal life. I think we do. I mean, it's not normal like other people's normal, but it's as normal as I've made it.
I agree. And you can make that decision.
Yeah. I made it a long time. I didn't want to get caught up in the silliness. I love what I do. I'm very proud of what I've done, but my home life is the most important thing, because otherwise we've seen it. People go mad.
No, it's really true. So tell me about the film. How, is it, are you in it? I'm now in it?
Yeah, I am interviewed. Because people say, "Oh, well done on the film," and I said, "Well, I didn't really do much. I did about 3 interviews."
Your personality. You see, I had no idea. I had no idea that this is Twiggy. I only had these stylistic views. I had all of the images and everything I put into it too. I would see it and put, because it was my moment too, but seeing it through you. But then, as you did other things, it was a stylistic Twiggy. I didn't know who you were.
But that's why the film, for me personally,
but it's
very nice for me, because a lot of people who came out of when I did the Q&As said, my God, we didn't realise all the other things you've done. So for me, because when something like what happened to me in 66, it was such a big thing that's what people remember. And that's fine. But I only modelled for 4 years.
No, but that was one thing. But what I'm talking about is my conversation with you right now. I would want to see you in films playing roles. I would, because you're...
That's sweet. Well, I do get offered things, but it's got to be the right thing.
No, I think this exposure is really great, because you're really a hoot. You're you are fun. You are like a...
Well, Sadie and I both said we should do a comedy together.
But I think that there's... well, she needs to come up with a movie, because I think, first of all, look at how many people are in our generation. Yeah. There is an audience that's not being catered to.
I know, I
agree. And you, and there are other actors out there that are in our age group. I know. But
But, I've always said, you cannot, often people say to me, how did you plan your career? You can't plan a career.
No, but this is like,
you have to. Yeah. I was lucky. I met Ken Russell. He changed my life. Through Ken, I met Tommy, and that changed my life doing Broadway. And one thing, and then I've done lots of other acting things that aren't as big as that, but I love it. But you have to be offered it. You can't.
But this film, I think,
may change it.
That's why I said, are you in it? Because
yes, I am.
It would be a shame
I am.
for people to miss
I'm interviewed about, well, I did it in over 4 days, and she's blotted it about.
But I'm sure she got your personality.
Oh, yeah,
I'm sure she got it. If she knows you and
I think
is sort of a friend.
Yeah, well, she got, if she didn't know me, it was 2.5 years in the making. So
wow.
Well, it's a big thing doing a documentary because you have, well, number one, you have to get together all the clips. There's a load of clips. Some I had never seen, actually.
And were you able to use everything, or did you have to get approvals?
Financially, some things were too expensive.
Wow.
Or she could only use, she wanted to use 1.5 minutes, but it was so expensive, especially if it's from an estate. If the person's passed, the estates are really tough. And obviously, with a document, well, with any film, you've got a budget. Mm. And our film company, it went over budget, of course, but they've been it's Film Soho. They've been amazing, and our main producer Nick Hampson has been very generous and. Because there were certain things I really wanted in it. Mm. And he would say it was very expensive. I thought, oh, please.
No, I'm just thinking if you, Joanna, Sadie, come on.
We need an idea.
Come on. No, we need a funny, fun.
Yeah, it's a great
uplifting,
idea.
your personality, Joanna.
Actually, because Joanna and I are very similar in age. I think she's a couple of years older than me. Sadie's 20 years younger. But
really?
There's something there.
So, but that's okay. Mm. That's okay.
Oh, yeah. We just need a writer. So anyone out there?
Well, no, but I'm just picking this up and thinking we need to laugh. See, the Brits laugh. They just laugh. Americans haven't laughed in so long. I'm so over it. I have to come here to laugh. I swear.
That's so
funny. We need to laugh desperately. That's why I'm looking at you thinking we need to kidnap this woman because I hope you mention it to Sadie.
I will.
Just please do because.
Okay. But what you need, we have talked about it, but you need a writer.
Well, so
if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage.
But I think there's so many concepts that have to do with real things that are happening with our generation right now. That's true. There's so much funny stuff going on because the world is so screwed up.
Tell me.
And we are still sober. We are still aware of how it could be as a normal place.
The last week has got even more. The whole world's gone. What's going to happen?
All I can say is we have to laugh, and it's really critical. And I think there's a good story here. There's many good stories. Yeah. It could be a series. Oh my God!
If you know any wonderful writers,
I don't. But I'm gonna put it out there because I just think comedy right now we're desperately in need of.
Yeah, that's true.
And even like a good series would just be perfect.
No, it'd be fun.
I could see this going on with you because you could talk and be entertaining. I'm sitting here and I'm like enjoying just being in your company. And I think that's and what I'm good at is because as a designer, I pick up a vibe for a moment or an energy, or I see something that can be a trend. This is my whole 58 years of doing this.
Amazing.
And I can see when something can work. I know that I have that skill. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, this woman's got to do something because you're like so easy to be with. And,
well, thank you.
And so I'm so happy to see that.
But, Sadie and I did say we should do something. It's just finding the right person to work with. But we will find somebody.
Yeah. It might even be an American.
Yeah.
Well, but they have no sense of humor, so I don't know that they'll get.
We always say, Lee and I, that in America the favourite word is we'll do this. Yeah. In England it's I'm not sure.
Oh really?
I've got to think about it.
Oh really?
Yeah. When you come to that. So
the only thing is you guys have the sense of humor, so we have to make sure.
It's like Diana Vreeland brought me over and it was like she threw
just
me
get
out.
It done.
Yeah.
Well, that it is our attitude.
And to be fair, Deirdre McSharry, who wrote that first piece about me, she did it here, but it's quite rare. in England. They're much more reserved and, but the
That's
Americans are brilliant at. I would never have done a big stage production in England. It happened because it was Broadway.
Yeah. Very interesting. Well,
and they opened their arms to me. I mean, they were the audiences were so wonderful.
You're totally deserving of it. And I think that this, just like you said, one thing brings the other. I think film,
it does.
So you have to tell us, when is it going to be in the States? When can
we haven't got a date, but I've been told by the film company, because it's been released in the UK, and I'm told by the film company it should be in the States later this year. But we haven't got a date yet.
So how is it being distributed?
The film company who made it are their own distributors, which is great because they haven't got to find a distributor. And they work with different distributors all around the world. So it'll go to Australia. It'll go, because, I'm big in Australia, I'm big in Japan, I'm big in Germany. No, it just made me laugh when we went to Barcelona because I thought, they're not going to get me. But they were brilliant. And they subtitled it in Barcelona. But in Copenhagen, they speak such good English. They didn't. Better English than me, I think.
No,
they are amazing, amazing. And they didn't even subtitle the film.
Wow!
And it was absolutely packed. It held about 800 people. It was huge.
I mean,
cinema.
I'm looking forward to it coming to the States, and then we can.
Well, it will. I just haven't got a date.
Yeah, and so you'll keep.
So
in
look
touch
out for it's called
me.
Twiggy.
Yeah, no, keep in touch, and we
should.
We can
because
do a little promo
once it comes to the States, we'll come over.
Yeah,
obviously.
and then when you're in New York, well, let's see. We can. I have a big space too. If you want to do something there, I think it's a great.
What do you mean you've got a big space?
I have 17,000 square feet for my company,
gosh.
I have a 38-foot LED wall, and it's like a great place to do talks, or if you want to do something. So if you want, I mean, it's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's.
But
what I'd really love to do, and because I finished doing my designing for M&S before COVID, it kind of got killed by that. I'd really love to do another range.
You should.
I really would.
But wait until this whole tariff thing is over.
This whole what?
The tariff.
Oh
and
my
just
God.
Wait.
Has that affected you?
Well, I think it affects everybody, but it's a complicated thing. It's a good thing for Americans.
Is it?
If
I hope so.
Well,
it's good for
in
somebody.
the end, because we have such a huge debt to China. And if we don't fix it, it could take down the country.
Oh, okay.
So it's a radical approach, which, nobody knows how it's going to come out. But if we ignore it, it's like worse. Never paying the mortgage and then all
never
of a sudden
fixing your toothache.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's that. So it's a little complicated.
Okay.
But
I hope you're right.
Yeah, I really hope something good comes from it. But I do think you have an audience for especially with the film. You should be. Well,
hopefully,
something.
it will come out in America.
But I mean, also
we'll probably come out to probably a film festival first, and then it will be released.
Yeah, but I wonder if I'm sure your guys know all the best distribution.
They're quite. That's part of their main business. So I think that, and we really like them and get on with them.
Well, so let me know, and
okay, I will.
Well,
it's been so lovely to meet you.
Give me a hug.
I feel like I've known you forever.
I know. Hey, press follow and leave a comment after you listen to the podcast. Thanks.